right, Euphoria fans, so season 3 episode 7 is now premiering on HBO Max, and we have to do our review, our recap, and our breakdown for this episode, which, by the way, this episode was real cinema. They knocked it out of the park with this one. They gave us an hour and a half of content of Euphoria, and I thought this episode was fantastic through and through, especially with that crazy ending there. We're going to talk about it all, we're going to discuss it all, but man, the next episode is going to be the finale. Can't wait for that. But let's go ahead and get into this review. Let's get into this breakdown, starting with the title of this episode. Now, the title of episode 7 is Rain or Shine, and we open up this episode with Ollie's backstory, very similar to how in episode 6 we opened up with Alamo Brown's. This time we got Ollie's backstory. This is, of course, like the father figure type of role character for Rue Bennett, and he's sort of been her connection to God, trying to push her more into a religious path and save her own life, save her soul. And man, his backstory was sad as hell. It shows him like smoking crack rock. Okay, he's sleeping with prostitutes. He's doing a lot of unruly, unholy, sinful behavior, and he ends up ruining his own life in the process. He's stepping out on his wife, and he ends up overdosing while out doing drugs with prostitutes, like I said. And he wakes up in a hospital. You know, he's very somber about this, very sad about this point in his life that he's found himself in, and this is what pushes him into changing his life. He ends up going to rehab, ends up getting closer to God, connecting with the Bible more. We see him keeping this long list of addicts that he tried to help throughout his life after he bettered his own life, and that, you know, he just couldn't save them. He ended up finding them dead somewhere. So he has a whole book, which he kind of called the Book of the Dead, which if you know anything about Egyptology, you'll know what the Book of the Dead is, right? So he keeps his own Book of the Dead in a way, a list of names of people that have died, former addicts, things like that, whose life he tried to help save and failed, sadly. And I think that's why, you know, he pushes so hard to try and help Rue, is because of this backstory. If he could just save one life, he's done his job at the end of the day. Now, moving on from Ollie's backstory, it comes into play later, but moving on from that, we pick up with Alamo Brown. He's talking to the manager of his club who ended up getting shot a couple episodes ago, with Rue being there when people broke into the safe. All right, and we see that he's patched up. He had to get stitches up his whole torso, his whole abdomen. He has like a bag put on there. And yeah, Alamo Brown is a ruthless son of a bitch. He sends him off to Mexico regardless of, you know, his handicap position. He's like, whatever, I want you to go off to Mexico. This is how you're going to make it up to me, even though he really didn't do anything wrong. But, you know, he is the boss, so he has to do what the boss says, and he plans on partnering up with one of Laurie's boys to go down to the border to secure their product and bring it back to them for one last heist. Now, we see Rue hanging out at Lexi's house, and Lexi's trying to write her script while Rue's trying to read her Bible, talking about the experience that she had at the end of the last episode where she's got more in touch with God, telling Lexi how she's been dealing with, you know, white supremacists. I'll say, I don't want to see the actual word for YouTube flagging and things like that, but also that she's been dealing with the DEA. And while Lexi is hearing all of this, she is just being extremely rude, extremely disrespectful, which I understand, right? Rue throughout the past has been someone who you can't really take her word for anything, right? You take everything she says with a grain of salt, you let it pass through one ear and out the other. But in this moment in time, Rue is genuine. She's trying to tell Lexi about her actual religious experience and the things that she's gone through in her life. And Lexi just chews her out, belittles her, right? Says all these terrible things to her, to the point where Rue's like, you know what? Screw you, Lexi. I don't want nothing to do with you right now. And she storms out. And that's the rest we see of that. And again, I think it's just another highlight on the Lexi character, at how bad this character can be just as much as everyone is, how flawed she can be just as much as everyone is, as much as she tries to act like she's not, right? I think that was the point here with this scene. Now let's move on to the next scene here, where we see Rue storm out of Lexi's house, goes to Cassie's, who lives like across the way from her upstairs, knocks on the door, and then we see a pistol get put up to that eye hole that Rue is looking through, trying to see if anyone's in the house. No one ends up answering, so now we know, okay, the Mafia is more than likely in Cassie's house, and luckily Rue ends up leaving. Here's yet another scenario where she nearly dodges death. Now, moving on to our next scene here, we kind of take a time skip back a couple of days and find out why these men were in Cassie's apartment. So we see Cassie calling the Mafia. They're telling her, like, listen, we need the money out of you one way or another. If you care about Nate, if you don't want him to die, you need to get me that money within 72 hours or he's going to die of dehydration. Okay, so she's like trying to figure out how she's going to come up with this money. She's trying to log back into OF. We know that she deleted it at the end of the last episode, so that route to making money is pretty much out the window. And she's pretty much screwed right now. She messed up. She shouldn't have done this for that audition. She was making enough money as it is. And she is completely out of luck in this certain scenario. Now, moving on to her sister, Lexi. She ends up getting approved with the storyline that she wrote for Cassie's character. But at the same time, the boss, through another meeting, decided, I don't really want nothing to do with an OF model starring in my show. Let's just get an actual actor. And she tells Lexi, listen, tell your sister she's fired. Lexi couldn't be more happier about this. She is over the moon that she gets to fire her sister. Like I said, we get to constantly see how much of a jealous and envious person she is and how she sort of just wants to tear down everything around her so that she can succeed at the end of the day, even though she says apparently that's what Cassie wants to do, which we know Cassie's no better, right? She's been a scumbag character too. But moving on, we see Maddie getting fired for introducing Cassie to one of her boss's clients. So Maddie, shit out of luck, she goes to see Cassie to, check up on her earner, on her top 1% earner. And in the meantime, she ends up finding that she deleted the account. And while this is happening, she pretty much tells her, like, listen, I'm your boss now. You're going to listen to me. After Cassie ends up telling her the situation that she's in and how she has no money left, she needs money to end up saving Nate's life. And so Maddie's like, we're done with the manager. All right, I am your boss now. You're going to listen to every single word I say. You're not going to do anything unless I tell you to do it. And that's how we continue with these characters moving forward. Now, Maddie ends up setting Cassie up for a dinner date with, another Hollywood star, another Hollywood celebrity. They hit it off. And as they're on their way out, Maddie sends TMZ, she sends paparazzi to go take pictures of them to blow Cassie's name up once again and get her account and her followers and her subscribers and all of this money back in Cassie's favor. Now, Cassie brings this Hollywood star home. She sleeps with him. And in the meantime, he goes off to get some water. This was a crazy as hell scene. He goes to get some ice. He picks up some ice. He's drinking the water. He doesn't realize that Nate's finger that was on ice is floating in his cup, and he is just drinking like amputated finger water. It's disgusting as hell. Very nasty scene here. But while all this is taking place, Cassie is going through his phone. She posts something on his phone of them hanging out together to get her followers back up, get her name back out there, hides his phone. So the post is up for like damn near half a day before he even discovers that it's up. Maddie ends up arriving the next day while the guy is still sleeping. They're talking like, how did you manage to get the post up? She ends up seeing Nate's finger inside of the sink. She's like, is that Nate's finger? What the hell is going on here? And now Maddie is beginning to see the drastic situation that Cassie is in, okay? So Maddie and Cassie's plan worked out. Her followers shoot up. Once again, they got her account back in a proper state. And so moving on, all right, we pick back up with Nate and what's going on with him. My boy's been suffering this whole season. I have not liked how they've done Nate this whole season, man. I felt really bad for him. Yes, he was, a typical high school jock type douchebag character in season 1 and season 2. He did some despicable things. A lot of characters did throughout those seasons. A lot of characters did despicable things. Why does Nate deserve as much as he's getting here inside of this season? They've been torturing this man, and I feel bad for Nate Jacobs, okay? But anyway, he is getting his size measured by the Mafia, by Nassim. He's like, what size are you? You're 6'5"? Okay, you don't fit into a normal casket. We're going to have to do a specially made casket for you. Nate's freaking the hell out. He tries to run off, gets his ass whooped once again. And while all of this is happening, Rue ends up going to visit Ali. She's telling Ali the truth about her current situation with the DEA and with everything. She's being completely honest with him. And he ends up saying, listen, I don't want you going off to Laurie's. I don't want you doing this one last thing for Alamo Brown. I want you to stay here, or I can go with you. And Rue's like, no, I don't want you to go with me. But eventually she ends up agreeing, like, okay, I won't go. I'll be here in the morning with you, and we can go off to visit, her mother, her sister, pick them up, make sure they're safe, because he is now aware that Bishop knows where they're at. Now, it was at this point in the episode that I'm like, are they about to kill off Ali? Like, that's sort of the vibes I was getting here, when you watch like a TV show or an anime or whatever, and they start showing a little too much of a certain character in his backstory who is a side character, and they haven't came up too much throughout the entire series, it starts to feel like, okay, they're gonna kill him off, because that's kind of what we're used to when they start doing things like that. So it doesn't happen in this episode, but I feel like, for the finale, we could potentially end up seeing Ali die, maybe trying to protect Rue or something. I'm not really sure how they're gonna do it, but it feels very suspicious with the way we finally got his backstory, and now suddenly he's this involved in the season towards the very end of the season. Now, moving on. Okay, we see the DEA is planning on stopping this drug mule that's going down to Mexico from Alamo Brown and Laurie, right? They have their own henchmen partnered up and driving down there. So the DEA is planning on stopping this. Rue ends up betraying Ali, betraying her word to Ali, and ends up driving down to Laurie's, to open up that safe, do this one last job, because in her mind, once she does this one last job, everything will be a-okay. She even goes so far with this job that she ends up slamming her own face into the dashboard of the vehicle so that she breaks her nose, looks injured when she goes to Laurie, so that she has a story that, yes, Alamo Brown beat me up, and that is why I'm here. I'm groveling back to you right now, so she can try and get back in Laurie's good graces. Now, meanwhile, we pick back up with Cassie. We end up finding out what happened when those Mafia goons visited her home. They knock on the door, she opens it, they choke slam her. Literally, the guy choke slams her, puts her through a glass table. I'm like, god damn, Cassie's like a little girl to this dude. He doesn't need to be doing all this, but the Mafia don't play around, okay? So they end up tying her up, and then Nassim comes to visit her to talk to her about Nate and about how they're going to get this money out of her. Now, we end up seeing Nate Jacobs, what's happening with him while the Mafia is out visiting Cassie, and it turns out they really did put him in a casket. They buried him alive in the ground. This was taken straight from Kill Bill. If you've ever seen Kill Bill, I believe Volume 2 starts like this, right? It starts with her buried in a live casket. Spoilers for Kill Bill. The movie's old as hell. You should have watched it by now. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the greatest two-part movies of all time. Kill Bill 1, Kill Bill Volume 2. Go watch those films once you're done watching this video if you haven't seen them. But we see Nate Jacobs buried alive, and then we see this rattlesnake going through the desert. They put a tube through the ground so that Nate can breathe. But what they didn't know is that a rattlesnake was going to get into this tube, and it ends up going into the tube, getting trapped in this casket with Nate Jacobs as he's tied up in the casket, can't defend himself, can't fight for himself. He is screwed at this point in time. And it was at this point in time that I'm like, are they about to kill off Nate Jacobs, bro? They did him so dirty this entire season. He got one nice send-off having his wedding, but at the very end of his wedding, that very night, his life has been hell ever since, and we haven't really seen him have a good moment in the series since. So it is the end of Nate Jacobs, guys. It is the end of him inside of this episode. We'll talk about it when it comes up. But with the rattlesnake being trapped inside of his casket with him and ends up biting Nate, we know he's pretty much screwed. You can't get out of this situation. Nate is done at this point in time. RIP my boy, okay? Before it even happens, before the reveal, I already gotta say RIP my boy at the time I seen this. But that's the end of Nate Jacobs right there, okay? Sadly, but with a big character death like this, I think they could do big things with this series. I think it's going to shock the audience in a major way, and it's a big part of why I love this particular episode so much. And honestly, a lot of this episode felt like I was watching a feature film. It felt like real cinema. But let's continue on here, because we do have a couple more things to highlight inside of this episode. So Rue is back with Laurie's crew. They're not really trusting her. They're saying, why would you come back to us after all this time? You need to be punished for what you did. They end up cutting her hand open. Crazy as hell. But eventually they all go back to the house together. Now, meanwhile, the Mafia is having Cassie call up Maddie to try and get some money. And after Maddie finds out that she's in this bad situation, she ends up going to Alamo Brown to ask him for a favor. He gives her a bathing suit, tells her yeah, come in the water, right? He's in this hot tub. At this point in time, this scene is weird as hell, because why are you trying to be overly flirtatious with what's supposed to just be your business partner? He's sort of crossing that boundary there, in my opinion, but she does need a favor out of him, and she ends up asking Alamo Brown pretty much to save Cassie's life. and to do this favor for her, give her the $1 million so that she can go pay this ransom money for Cassie. And he pretty much agrees and says, yeah, I'll help you out with this plan. But in the process of this scene, her dumbass ends up telling Alamo Brown that Rue mentioned the DEA. So why the hell would she say this? Maddie should be smart enough for this, but I guess she's not. Maybe she doesn't know what the DEA is, how that's possible, I don't know. But she ends up revealing this to Alamo Brown in this scene, and he doesn't react, right? He's an old school player. He keeps it cool. He goes, oh, really? She said that? Yeah, that girl's crazy, you know. But in the back of his mind, we already know Alamo Brown is plotting and scheming because he has stayed ahead of the game this entire time for, what, decades now, I'm sure. So he's going to figure out some way out of this situation, surely, right? Alamo Brown is a very smart and conniving character. But moving on, okay, and it was at this point in the show I'm like, damn, everyone is really getting involved in this mess. All of our main characters, like outside of Lexi, is getting involved in this mess. It's crazy as hell right now. This series is on fire. It's really good, and I think they've done a really good job with this season so far, quite honestly. You know, we've had a slump episode, one episode where I'm like, it was good, but it wasn't that great. But so far, this series has been on fire. But let's continue with our final scenes here. We have Alamo Brown grabbing the cash in the briefcase, taking Maddie to this meet. They end up meeting up with the Armenian Mafia, okay, with Nassim, and he ends up telling Maddie, like, listen, I brought you all this way, I gave you the money, it's your deal, you go out there and make the deal, I'm not going out there. So she goes out there to make the deal. She hands the cash over, and while she's handing the cash over, he ends up getting out of the car. Alamo Brown, once the enemies get out of the car, the Armenian Mafia gets out the car, Alamo Brown does too, to just watch over Maddie, make sure she's good. And while this deal is taking place, he ends up putting a bullet through Nassim's skull, shoots him right in the head from very far. He's still pointing the gun at Nassim's henchman. He ends up telling him, like, listen, you better have a hell of a aim, because I for sure do, right? You just seen that take place. I for sure got some aim on me, so you better have some aim on you if you really want to shoot it out right now. The guy decides it's better not to, and to just go along with what's taking place. And then we see Nassim on the ground just choking, bleeding out, which, thank God, bro. I am tired of this character. He is an evil, wicked son of a bitch. I have not enjoyed whatsoever him torturing Nate. You know, them cutting the finger off the one time, or the toe off the one time, I was like, okay. But then when we kept chopping off body parts and limbs, bro, we've gone too far. It was too far for me. And I'm glad that this character has finally met his grisly end. But unfortunately, he's not the only character that did, okay? So we have to talk about what happens next. Alamo Brown tells Maddie, listen, you owe me a debt after doing this for you. Don't think I just did this for you because I have a sweet spot for you, okay? You are going to owe me after this, so we'll see how that ends up coming into play. We know with Alamo Brown, it's not going to be in any good way whatsoever. This guy's a despicable human being. And so moving on, they end up digging Nate's casket out of the ground. Cassie screaming her bloody head off. They end up opening it up, and none other than Nate's corpse is inside of that casket. It looks like he's been there for quite some time, but we know he hasn't though, right? And we could see that poison from the snake just going throughout his whole body, throughout all of his veins. I mean, it looked grisly as hell, and I can't believe they killed off a staple character. Honestly, round of applause and bravo from the writing department. I did not expect them to take it this far this season, and like I said, this was a fantastic way to keep surprising and keep shocking your audience, keep the audience on its toes. We never know what's going to happen next. I really didn't expect Nate to get killed off. I thought they were going to figure out the money situation somehow through Cassie. He would pay them off, and that would be that. But no, the Mafia dude ends up dying. Nate ends up dying too, so those characters are completely written off of the show. And this was a very big decision from Sam Levinson, so shout out to him for making the hard choice here by killing off Nate. But while they're screaming their head off, right, Cassie's freaking the hell out, crying bloody murder. Maddie is just watching the entire time. She's just sitting there watching, looking at the casket, looking at Nate in the casket. And she is cold-blooded, man. She is not crying at all. She doesn't even look sad. She doesn't look happy either. She just looks unfazed, which was very surprising for me. We'll see if that ends up mentally affecting her in the future. But moving on, okay, the final scene in the episode, Rue and Faye, they're staying in the house. They're going to break into the safe because Rue promised Faye that she could have the money. Once they get into the safe, she could have a good portion of the money. And so they sneak down into the basement, right? Faye's white supremacist boyfriend is asleep right near the safe, so they're trying to open it quietly, but they keep making little noises. The whole scene is suspenseful as hell. I was scared for them, quite honestly, but they end up getting the safe open, and they end up finding out that no money is in the safe. They moved the money, who knows where they moved it, and all that remains inside of it is a bunch of licenses. So we're like, what the hell is this? You know, they're looking at the licenses. They're like, who are these people? What the hell is all this? I'm pretty sure I know what this is. We'll talk about it in just a second. But once they find out there's no money, Faye ends up freaking the hell out. She's like, you told me there'd be money here. Rue's like, there was money here. You know there was money here. I didn't betray you. Can you calm down? And Faye has had enough. All right, she screams bloody murder. She screams out loud for her boyfriend that's asleep right by the safe in the pitch black of the night. And of course, he has a gun right by the bedside, and that's when the episode cuts to black. A fantastic cliffhanger here. Rue is in the thick of it now. I wonder how she's going to get out of this situation. She's pretty much screwed, right? She is in a hell of a lot of trouble here, and I can't wait to see this finale. They've built it up in the perfect way with a fantastic episode for episode 7, and man, if they nail this finale, this may be the best season of Euphoria yet. I mean, I don't know if it's beating season 1, because season 1 is still my favorite, but this may be the best season of this show yet, and it kind of just goes to show how overhated this series has been, because they've done a fantastic job here. This felt like I said, like a feature film. This felt like real cinema. I love pretty much every second of this episode through and through. And as far as what I think these licenses were inside of the safe, I'm pretty sure that that is blackmail that they're holding over Alamo Brown, because he has been organ dealing. Okay, I think he's been selling off these girls. Remember when the stripper was acting up and he has Rue bring her to rehab, and that rehab facility is suspicious as hell. You don't sign any paperwork or anything, and they just send her off down some hallway, and Rue's kind of looking at her in that scene like, damn, I think this is the last time I'll ever see this person. And then we see an ambulance pull in to pick up the girl, seemingly. What I'm pretty sure that is he has been organ dealing. He has been cutting up and killing these women after they've pretty much ran their course, and he is black market selling them. I think that's how sick and disgusting and vile Alamo Brown is as a human being, and we just haven't seen the full extent of it yet. Quite honestly, like, we thought he was better than Laurie at first, but Rue's going to find out, no, you made a deal with the devil, and that's pretty much what is going to be revealed to us. I'm pretty sure that's where we're going here. But man, round of applause. I feel like this series has pushed the boundaries as to what the show Euphoria can be. They've somehow managed to make an amazing season so far, and I am beyond impressed with this series. They took a risk, they made hard decisions, and they've elevated this series to the point of no return. So I can't wait for the finale. If I had to rate Euphoria season 3, episode 7, I would give this episode a 10 out of 10. It gets the 10 out of 10. A fantastic episode. And man, can't wait for the finale. Make sure you tune into us reacting to the episode 8 trailer. Okay, I'm gonna drop a video on that after this one releases, so stay tuned for that. And those are my thoughts on this episode, guys. I'm curious to know your thoughts about this episode down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Demigod YouTube, we do film, TV, and pop culture based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.